Welcome back to another episode of the Cleveland Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sebastian Lorenzo, and I started this podcast to showcase the many things that top producing Ohio real estate agents are doing to grow their businesses. And before we begin, I just want to shout out our podcast sponsor, Estate Photography. Estate Photography is a real estate photography company that specializes in ground photo and video, drone photo and video, virtual staging, Matterport, and floor plans. They're a great company run by some great guys at great prices. And if you mention that you're a listener of the Cleveland Real Estate Podcast, they'll even give you a free drone video package with the purchase of their ground photo package for your first listing. To find out more, visit their website at e-statephotography.com. Once again, that's e-statephotography.com, or you can call or text Matt, the co-owner, at 716-253-3771. And once again, that's 716-253-3771. Enjoy this episode of the Cleveland Real Estate Podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cleveland Real Estate Podcast. I'm here with Connor Kobilarcsik of Russell Real Estate Services. How are you today, Connor?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So, Connor, just the way I like to start all these episodes is, introduce yourself, how long you've been in the business, and then, of course, if you want to talk about the volume that you've done, that is optional.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Connor Kobilarcsik, like Sebastian said. I've been licensed now for a little over 2 years. I was licensed in January 2021. I've been full-time in real estate, meaning I haven't had a W-2 job for about probably 18 or 19 months. And in that time, I've sold a little over $10.5 million of real estate.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the main reason I wanted to have Connor on is because, he's a newer agent and, comes from a totally different industry. And, this is, something that he's been able to achieve only being in the business for 2 years, and honestly not even full time for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So just starting off, one question again that I like to ask everyone is, what is the reason that you became a real estate agent, and specifically, what do you think is different about Cleveland?
Sure. Yeah, it was actually kind of an accident, somewhat. So I was a caseworker. I have a degree in social work. I was a caseworker at a nonprofit. And at some point, about 2.5 years ago, I didn't want to go back to school to get my master's degree, which in social work is pretty integral if you want to move up the ladder and start to earn a better income. And I didn't want to go back to school. So what else do you do, I guess, when you don't want to go back to school but don't have a degree in anything else? And I got my real estate license kind of on a whim, just something. I was going to classes in the evening. Figured I'd maybe do it on nights and weekends. I don't come from a real estate family. No one in my family has invested in real estate, none of that. So I really didn't have any idea, to be honest, at all of anything about the business. I kind of just fell into it. It was definitely not something I grew up with or something that I always thought that I would be doing. So it's interesting to be where I'm at right now, for sure.
For sure, yeah. That's very interesting, because I was overhearing some real estate agents like a few days ago, and they were talking about like how a lot of times you get your real estate license because you're it's not working out in your current career field and you move on to something else. And a lot of times these are the people that are like born to be real estate agents, or like rather their whole family's real estate agents. These are the people that don't necessarily have the interest to be maybe super big or super successful. I don't know. I just always find it that the people that like kind of found their way into real estate are the most successful.
Sure.
So, I really want to dive into your success early on. So, I guess, first off, of all the business that you've done in the past 12 months or since you started your real estate career, where did that business come from? What are the lead sources or the business sources?
So I would say like 80% of it has been sphere referral type of business. Through social media, through networking, things like that. A small percentage of it has been through prospecting for sale by owners, open houses, things like that. But most of my businesses come from all kind of, I guess, quote unquote, old school techniques. I don't pay for any leads. I don't buy leads. So most of it has come from either just networking or prospecting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's pretty awesome. So specifically, because you talked about networking and social media.
Yeah.
And I know that you're really active on social media. You do a lot of those reels, and we were just talking about that with the green screen kind of effect. So two questions, I guess, in one. How have people found you on social media? I guess, what have you were you always active on social media, or did you just start and then start seeing people coming from social media? Like how did that work? How does it work on social media for you? Getting
Yeah,
business that way?
it's actually funny because I was off of all social platforms for probably 4 years before I got my license. So I've built my Facebook
Really?
and my Instagram from scratch. I don't have a lot of Instagram
Yeah.
followers. I think right now I have like 950 or something like that. But I built that all from
Yeah.
scratch 2 years ago because I wasn't on any socials. I actually
Yeah.
hated social media. But
Yeah.
I knew when I got my real estate license, I needed to be able to let people know that I got my real estate license. And so that was the best way that I knew about being able to do
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I've gotten, a lot of it's just connecting with people online,
Yeah.
and then showing proof of success. So when I started doing deals and I started holding open houses, I made sure people knew that I was doing those things. And over
Yeah.
time, people started to think of me when they thought of real estate, because I was so
Yeah.
active on those sites. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, just today I posted something and I got two, leads, I would call them, people that I went to high school with who I haven't talked to in forever, and I'm probably going to have a listing appointment out of it. So these kinds of
That's
things
awesome.
just happen from consistency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Do you have like any do you have any way, how do you determine what you're going to post on a given day? Do you
Sure.
have any sort of calendar?
No, and I should. These are things I'm
Yeah.
definitely working on
Yeah.
implementing, but no, I don't have a calendar. I will usually bulk shoot like reels or anything I'm doing. I'll do like 5 or 6 at a time, and then I'll just post them throughout the week. But I don't really have a
That's
rhyme
smart.
or a reason for it. And
Yeah.
then I'm showing a lot of my personality. So like if you look at my Instagram, a lot of it's real estate. But if you follow me in my stories, it's mostly
Yeah.
just my life, like saying
Yeah.
weird stuff, doing like random stuff. Like it's not all real estate
Yeah.
all the time. So I've found that
Yeah.
I get the most engagement on those kinds of posts and stories. So
It's true.
yeah,
Yeah. I see that for myself as well. Like when I post random stuff about my dog, or like
yeah,
that's what people care most
for
about.
sure,
Like they care less about the mortgage content,
for
you know?
sure.
So yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. All right, so social media, I mean, has been pretty lucrative for you in terms of just getting your name out there, showing proof of success, that kind of stuff. What about you also mentioned networking? So what sort of networking things have you done? Have you gone to any events, or like is it just getting introduced to other people from your friends or current sphere?
Sure, yeah. So I've been to a bunch of different kinds of events. I'm in a networking group full of other professionals. But when I use the term networking loosely,
Yeah,
I go to a lot of social events. I hang out with a lot of people. I'm born and raised here, so
yeah,
it's more so when I'm with people. And I almost never have to bring it up. People will ask me, and then it's being able to make genuine connections with people. And
100%.
so a lot of what I was doing in the beginning was, um, how do I get people to think of me as not only someone who has the real estate license, because getting a real estate license really isn't that difficult, but someone who
Yeah,
knows about the market and can actually help me make a decision about purchasing or selling my biggest asset. And so what I did was I learned a lot about the market, the hot sheets, the solds, the under contracts, the interest
yeah,
rates, the articles, what's going on in the economy. So that way, when people ask me questions, I can give them intelligent answers instead of just
for sure.
telling them, oh, it's a great time to buy or it's a great time to sell. Instead, I can give them some actual insight into their own, how the market's going to affect their own personal situation and goals. So that's been a really big
That's
part
very
of it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's different because most people, like you said, most people are just saying like, "Hey, it's always a good time to buy or sell," but they don't really give like a reason for it.
Right.
And I think positioning yourself in that way, where you're like coming from a place of knowledge, is beneficial, and people will see that,
For
right away.
sure.
That's really cool. So basically, all right. And so let's just say social media, networking, doing a lot of social events. Do you have any sort of like play? I guess if I wanted to go to some more events or more things like that, where would you recommend that I would go
So
to
I
meet more
getting
people?
involved in organizations and things that you enjoy. So I'm a member of Plexus, which is the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I'm trying to get more involved this year. I last year I kind of fell
Yeah.
off a little bit, but I
Hmm.
trying to get involved in my community and with my people,
Yeah.
to just meet
Yeah.
people that way with not necessarily um, I'm not going in there to get business, because it's just not my
Yeah.
personality. But the more people you meet, the more business ends up coming to you and the
For sure.
opportunities grow. So that's one thing I'm
100%.
involved in. And then, I mean, honestly, a lot of it's just people in the community and social gatherings and things like that. Yeah, that I meet people.
Cool. So, and by the way, do you have like specific areas that you work in, or do you work all over Northeast
I
Ohio?
work all over. I would say
Okay.
like right now, my business is probably like 70% buyers, so they take me everywhere. I've
Yeah,
worked
for sure.
in pretty much every county of Northeast Ohio. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. So, do you have like what would be your, I guess, recommendation? So, if I'm a brand new agent that just got their license, let's just say I'm, either 21 or I'm 45, right? It doesn't matter. What would be your first step?
So the first step, what did I do at first? I mean, when I first got my license, it's very overwhelming, right? Like
Yeah.
I definitely had this, I think, idea that people were just going to start coming to me to want to buy their home or sell their home, and that's not, at least for me, how it worked out at all. And so
Yeah.
I had to go hunting for my business through prospecting, and then I also had to again make sure that I had market knowledge. So I'm a mentor at my office, and one of the things that I'm going to be, that I tell my mentees is like the best thing you could do all day, besides trying to set appointments, is to make sure you understand the market, so that when people ask you questions, you can intelligently answer them. And be able to give them actual insight and data of what's actually going on in the
Yeah.
market, rather than just using buzzwords like "oh, the market's
Yeah.
crazy," or so we can actually have intelligent things to say back to them. And that's how you gain
Yeah.
people's trust, and then getting their contact information and following up and adding value, rather than just sending texts that say, "Hey, I'm just checking in." Giving them something of value that they can use.
That's a great point. I think I say it's a great point because um, sending a text to say, "Hey, just following up" is one thing, but you say like, "Hey, here's just a quick update for you on how things are
Right.
going in the market," right?
Right.
I mean, that is a follow up text without following up.
Right.
Like you're following up, or you're not following up. You're giving value, like you said, adding
100%.
value, which makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's just about creating value. I mean, it was hard for me in the beginning. I mean, I closed maybe 4 deals in my first 9 months. Like so,
really,
yeah. So like I worked as a caseworker, and then I left my job, and then I was working in a warehouse like packing stuff. So it took me a long
yeah,
time to get my feet on the ground. It was not an overnight thing for me,
yeah,
because people didn't
yeah.
associate me with real estate. They didn't associate my family with real estate. Like so it took time. It took time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome though because I mean I think a lot of times we forget like when we're in the trenches like we're getting day to day you're like all right I put in all these calls today or I put in all this work today and I got nothing out of
Yeah.
it, but we like forget that like it's a marathon,
America
things don't happen overnight,
for sure.
sometimes they do
Yeah.
but for most people they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I it's just kind of like there's a book called The Compound Effect that talks about that like it takes time but
Yeah.
once you get some traction it shoots up,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, did you have any like fears or like fear of rejection or anything that you had to like overcome that you felt like you had to overcome
Um,
when you were first starting out?
I still do.
Yeah,
Yeah, big time. Like I feel like I've barely even scratched the surface. That's how I feel about me. I mean, I've done pretty well. But I feel like I've barely even scratched the surface with those kinds of things. So, yeah, like
yeah,
I face the fear of rejection all the time, and it gets better. I will say the more
yeah,
transactions you have going on, the less emotions you have
for
tied
sure.
into the commission checks, and you can
Yep.
lead with you don't have to have commission breath, as they call it. Like I need this money. So it gets easier to manage my emotions
Yeah,
as time goes on, and I have a better knowledge of how to handle transactions and get buyers and sellers to the closing table. But yeah, I mean, I still have fear
for
of
sure.
rejection, just like I did in the beginning. So I mean, it's something that I have to work through, but that's like
Yeah,
that's a life thing for me. It's a personality thing. I think some people
yeah,
are naturally confident. I definitely have some confidence, but I also want people to like me. And in real
yeah.
estate, like I hear a lot of no's, a lot. And so, it takes a lot of mental toughness to be able to keep
100%.
moving, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what are, I guess, kind of finishing things up for, I guess, for you and yourself, what are your goals for the year for 2023 for yourself, or I guess in long-term goals, what do you see yourself doing with real estate?
Sure. Yeah. So I have some pretty lofty goals as far as like transaction volume goes, but I won't get into too much of that. Really, my goals for myself, for this year and where I see real estate taking me is I'm really starting to try to grow a business and running it like a business. So I would like to, at some point this year, bring on someone to start handling my transactions on the back end and starting to delegate these roles that don't make me money and start to only my focus. Like I want my focus to be like prospecting, setting appointments, and signing contracts. So that would be, that's a big goal for myself this year, is to bring somebody on, whether it's a transaction coordinator or some kind of assistant. Even though I don't think I can handle my transactions, I'm not closing enough deals. But with that being said, I think that I have to take those risks of paying someone to be able to focus on what to grow. You know what I mean? So that's kind of one of my goals for this year.
Yeah, that's a really good. It's a really good point. And I think, the goal is that you'll eventually be at a place in your own personal production where you're requiring, you don't have the time to do all the back end stuff. You know what I'm saying? And that, I mean, some agents have do you have like plan, or do you have any goals or desire? Cause I know you said you're a mentor for your office. So do you have any plans to grow a team at one point or become a broker or anything like that?
No, honestly, I'm not much of a manager or a leader. To be honest, it's not really my thing. So, my dream business would be like just having assistants, or people who are on my team. Assistants is the wrong term to use. Like having a chief operations officer, a personal assistant, which, for again, lack of a better term, who handles like maybe marketing and stuff like that. And I'd rather just build a team like that where maybe they're all licensed, but I'm the one going on listing appointments, and I just have people working on everything else. That's kind of what my ideal business looks like. I don't really have any goals or dreams of building like a big team or anything like that. No.
Cool. Yeah, and everyone has like their like, I guess, wants and desires, and some people, like you said. I'm kind of the same way as you. I mean, I would rather build up my thing and have people that work with me to help me build my thing and, build a team. So I understand totally. So I guess to wrap things up, what is the best way that someone can contact you if it's a client or just maybe another real estate agent who might want some of your advice? I guess a newer agent. What are some of the best ways to do that?
For sure. Well, my cell phone, of course, but on Instagram, my name is Connor Koby Realtor. Connor Koby Realtor. And then on Facebook, it's just my name, Connor Kobilarcsik. Those are the two best ways to get a hold of me. Those are the two social platforms I use the most.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'll throw that into our my podcast notes. But cool. Like I said, when we started this podcast, I think this would be really good because again, you come from a whole different background from other than real estate, and you were able to make it happen somehow. For yourself, and just being a real estate agent for 2 years and change, or 2 years and 2 months, basically.
Yeah.
So I think this is gonna be really good for other real estate agents who are newer, who maybe are struggling because they're in the weeds every day. They're not seeing any progress, but they got to remember, like, hey, Connor, it took him 9 months to close 4 deals. So basically, if he can do it, I can do it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you being on the podcast, Connor, and looking forward to I'll stay in touch and follow you on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully we get some individuals reaching out to you to help them out.
Thanks, Sebastian. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cleveland Real Estate Podcast. If you're a real estate agent in the Cleveland and surrounding areas, reach out to us on Instagram at Cleveland RE Podcast, or send us an email at clerepodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow the podcast so you're notified of new episodes going forward. See you next time.